Hi everyone, this is the video for lesson 27, session 2, and it starts on page 561. Okay, so we have a try it problem to begin. We're still just comparing decimals, and today just in the hundredths place value. Okay, so it says Dora the Explorer lives 35 hundredths of a mile from school. Katrina lives 53 hundredths of a mile from school. Who lives a greater distance from school? So we're just comparing 35 hundredths and 53 hundredths. So this is where the symbol would go. This is how far Dora lives from school. This is how far Katrina lives, and the question was who lives a greater distance, so who lives further from the school. So I could do this a couple different ways. I could make a place value chart. Ones place, decimal point, not really a place, tenths place, and hundredths place. So 0 and 35 hundredths. 0 and 35 hundredths, and then 0 and 53 hundredths. 0 and 53 hundredths. So if I have a place value chart and I'm comparing the numbers, I always start as far left as I can on the chart. So this is the left side, this is the right side. I always start as far left as I can. The 0 or the ones place doesn't help me because they're both 0. The tens place does help me because they're different. What's larger, 3 or 5? 5 is larger, so that means that's the larger decimal because 5 tenths is bigger than 3 tenths. 53 hundredths is larger than 35 hundredths. Okay, I could also compare them by converting them to fractions. Okay, so 35 hundredths as a decimal looks like that, but as a fraction, it's 35 hundredths. And on the other side will be 53 hundredths. There it is as a decimal. As a fraction, 53 hundredths. Okay, so my denominators are the same, 100 and 100, so I can compare them. 35, 53. Which one's larger? 53 hundredths. Okay, so 53 hundredths is greater than 35 hundredths, or 35 hundredths is less than 53 hundredths. But the question was who lives a greater distance from school? So in a sentence, we need to say Katrina lives a greater distance from school, or lives further from school. So that's it. Pause it there if you need to catch up. Looks a little bit messy, sorry. Let's try and separate it. So there it is, just with the symbol on the top, with a place value chart, with the fractions, converting them to fractions, and my answer in a sentence. Okay, next page. So here are the strategies the book used. They drew models for both, which again, there are faster ways to do it because I'm not trying to draw 100 squares every time I need to compare two decimals, but that's okay. 35 hundredths looks like this. There are 35 little squares, and 53 hundredths, 53 are colored in. So you can tell the blue area is larger than the pinkish area. Right? Okay, and down here is the place value chart, same as the one that we did. So first you compare the ones, and it's the same, 0 and 0. So it doesn't help us. So we move over to the next place value, which is tenths. The tenths help us though, because they're different, and 5 is larger than 3. And then you don't even have to look at the hundredths place value because this one helped you. Okay. So questions on page 563 about those strategies. Okay, number 1, look at the models on the previous page. Write a fraction equivalent to 35 hundredths and 53 hundredths. So remember, whatever number you say is the numerator, the place value say is the denominator. 35 hundredths. 35 is the number I said. The place value I said was hundredths, so that's 100. 53 hundredths. Okay, so there are my fractions. And which fraction is greater? Number 2, 35 hundredths or 53 hundredths? Well, 53 hundredths is the greater fraction. Is greater than 35 hundredths, and it says explain how you know, so we'll say because it has the greater numerator. Right? 53 is the numerator, it's greater than 35. Okay, number 3, write the symbols in the circle to make a true statement. 35 hundredths is less than 53 hundredths. It eats the larger one, but this also kind of looks like an L. Like if you just tilt it sideways a little bit, so it's L for less than. 35 hundredths is less than 53 hundredths. Who lives a greater distance from school? That was Katrina. Do the model and place value chart support your answer? Explain. So this model and this place value chart, are they good evidence for our answer that Katrina lives further? Yes, because this model shows 53 squares colored in, and that's more than 35 squares colored in. And this one shows that it has a greater digit in the 10th place than 35 hundredths. Let's just say yes. We just talked about it. We don't have to write it down, as long as you were listening. Were you listening? Rewind it if you weren't listening. Number 4, explain how you can use fractions to compare two decimals when both are in hundredths. Okay, so if they're both hundredths, then you can write them as fractions. You can write them as fractions with 100 as the denominator, right, because they're in hundredths. And then compare the numerators. Okay, so that's a good strategy if you need to use fractions. Okay, reflect. Which is your favorite strategy? Do you like the models, place value chart, or comparing them to fractions? Those are your choices. So, model, place value chart, or converting to fractions. Which is your favorite strategy out of those 3, and why is it your favorite? So pause and answer that question, and then turn the page. Okay, number 6. Compare 4 and 21 hundredths and 4 and 12 hundredths using the symbols. Explain how you got your answer, show your work. Okay, so we have 2 different numbers, and they have a whole number. They have ones. So I'm going to use a place value chart. I would not do a model for this one because you would have to draw 4 whole models colored in and then 21 hundredths of another model. You could convert them to fractions. That would work. I'm going to do a place value chart. Decimal, tenths, hundredths. Okay, 4 and 21 hundredths. 4 and 21 hundredths. 4 and 12 hundredths. 4 and 12 hundredths. All right, so there's my place value chart. So I start over here on the left. I look at the ones place. That doesn't help me because they're the same number, 4 and 4. Then I look at the next place value, which is my tenths place. This one helps me because they're different numbers, 2 and 1. What's greater, 2 or 1? Definitely 2, right? So there's my larger number. I don't even have to look at the hundredths place because just here I can tell that the top number is going to be larger than the bottom number. So 4 and 21 hundredths is greater than 4 and 12 hundredths. Okay, I could also convert them to fractions. 4 and 21 hundredths is 4 wholes, 21 hundredths. 4 and 12 hundredths is 4 and 12 hundredths. 21 in my numerator is greater than 12 in my numerator. So, using symbols, 4 and 21 hundredths is greater than 4 and 12 hundredths. Explain how you got your answer. I used a place value chart. I forgot the A. I used a place value chart. And the tenths place helped me because 2 is greater than 1. Star for showing your work, star for your solution, and your explanation. So this is your solution, just the comparison using the symbol, and then explaining your answer is another star. Okay, number 7, when you're ready. Cord writes a decimal number that is greater than 39 hundredths but less than 44 hundredths. What number could Cord have written? Show your work. So it has to be in between this decimal and this decimal. So we had a number line, 0 and 39 hundredths, and then on the other side is 0 and 44 hundredths. So it has to be greater than this number, but less than that number. So it has to be in between there somewhere, okay? So let's switch colors. Next would be 40 hundredths, then 41 hundredths, 42 hundredths, 43 hundredths, and then 44 hundredths. I did not space this out very evenly, but you get the point. So it could be any number, any one of those. Okay, so those are all your possible answers. I'm going to write all of them. You don't have to. 0 and 40 hundredths, 0 and 41 hundredths, 0 and 42 hundredths, 0 and 43 hundredths. Or just 43 hundredths. You don't have to have the 0, right? So any of those is fine. Star for showing your work, star for your solution. Okay, last one. Which is less? Okay, less, not greater than. Usually it always asks us greater than. 97 hundredths or 79 hundredths. Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 different ways. Place value chart first. Oh, that is not pretty. Okay, here we go. Ones place, decimal point, tenths, hundredths. 0 and 97 hundredths. 0 and 79 hundredths. Ones place doesn't help me. Tenths place does help me. 9 is greater than 7. So there's my greater number, but it's asking which is less, so this technically is the lower number, 79 hundredths. I could also convert those to fractions. 97 hundredths, 79 hundredths. Because the denominator is the same, all I have to do is look at the numerator. 79 is less than 97, so 97 hundredths is greater than 79 hundredths. So which is less? 0 and 79 hundredths is less. Star for showing your work, star for your answer. Okay, pause it on that page if you need it. We've just got the practice page left. So it's just front and back. We've got this. Okay, sample problem's done. We don't have to worry about it. Number 1, shade and label the models to show 33 hundredths and 35 hundredths. Then explain how the models show which decimal is less. So first step, shading. I guess we have to label them so they can be either one, doesn't matter. One of the decimals was 0 and 33 hundredths, the other one was 0 and 35 hundredths. If you already did this problem and flip-flopped them, that's totally fine. They don't have to be in a certain space. So 33 hundredths, so I need to color in 33 squares, so I'm just gonna color in 3 columns first. Okay, and there's my 30, and then 3 more. And then on this one, same thing, 3 columns to be 30, 10, 20, 30, and then I need 5 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. So they're really close together. They're very similar numbers. Okay, and then I have to explain how the models show which decimal is less. So there's fewer squares colored in for 33 hundredths. There are fewer squares shaded for 33 hundredths than there are for 35 hundredths. Okay. Stars for your models, star for your explanation. Number 2, complete the place value chart to show both decimals and explain how the chart shows us which one is less. So 0 and 33 hundredths, 0 and 35 hundredths. Okay, so I look at my ones place, doesn't help me. I look at my tenths place, still doesn't help me because it's the same. So I have to look all the way at my hundredths place. This one helps me because they're different. 3 is less than 5. So which number is less would be 33 hundredths. Okay, so we could just say in the hundredths place, 3 is less than 5. Hundredths place, 3 is less than 5. Perfect. So star for finishing your chart, star for your explanation. Pause it if you need it. Just the back page is left. Whoa, okay. A lot going on over here. So, zoom in. Number 3, it says use the digits in the tiles below, so these little boxes, to write decimals that make each statement true. You may use a digit more than once. So you see the blanks? We just have to put one of these numbers in each blank to make it true. So on this side is 21 hundredths is greater than something, 20 something. So 21 hundredths is going to be greater than, there's only one number we could put in this one. Only digit we could put in is a 0. 21 hundredths is greater than 20 hundredths. But we can't put a 2, 3, 4, 5, or even a 1. Because 21 hundredths wouldn't be greater than 21 or 22 or 23, 24, or 25, right? So that one has to be a 0. B, 46 hundredths is less than something 6 hundredths. So we have to put in a tenths place digit here. And it has to be greater than 46. So we can't put a 0 or a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or 4. We can only put a 5 for this one. Right? Because 56 hundredths is greater than 46 hundredths. Nothing else would work in that box, though. Tricky. Okay, C, 99 hundredths is less than blank. So it's just the ones place. So for this one, we could put in almost any digit. We can't put a 0 because 99 hundredths wouldn't be less than 0. But 99 hundredths is less than any whole number greater than 0. So you could put a 1, but you could also put 2, 3, 4, or 5 in that box. Any of those would be fine. Okay, so whatever number you put in there, as long as you didn't put a 0. And this one has 2 blanks. 70-something hundredths is greater than 70-something hundredths. So you just have to put a larger number in this box than that one. So this one can be 5 and this one could be 3. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want to put, just put the larger one on that side because this is the greater side of our comparison and this one's the less. So 75 hundredths is greater than 73 hundredths. As long as you put a larger number on that side and a lower number on this side, it would work. Okay. All right, number 4, write the symbol that makes each statement below true. So all we have to do is write a symbol in the bubble. We don't have to explain, we don't have to show why, nothing. So this one, A, 85 hundredths, 82 hundredths. What's larger? 85. B, 9 hundredths or 10 hundredths? Well, in the tenths place, there's a 0 here and a 1 here, so that's larger. C, 45 hundredths, 54 hundredths. They just swap the numbers, but a 5 in the tenths place is greater than a 4 in the tenths place. So 54 hundredths is the greater one. 1 and 10 hundredths or 1 and 1 hundredth. So 1 is the same in the ones place. And then we look at the tenths place, there's a 1, here's a 0. 1 in the tenths place is greater than 0, so 1 and 10 hundredths is bigger than 1 and 1 hundredth. And last one. This is the only like super confusing one, I think. 30 hundredths and 3 tenths. If we look at the ones place, they're the same, 0 and 0. If we look at the tenths place, 3 and 3, still the same. If we look at the hundredths place, 0 and nothing, which is the same as saying 0. So these are equal because as a fraction, 30 hundredths looks like that, and that 3 tenths, okay, those are equivalent, those are equal, because if you multiply the numerator and denominator by 10, you get 30 hundredths. So that one was the only one that was trying to trick you. I mean, some of them were still tricky because some of the numbers are just like barely different. But. Okay, star for each one of those. And last problem, number 5. Ryder buys 75 hundredths of a pound of turkey and 57 hundredths of a pound of cheese. Does he buy more turkey or more cheese? Show your work. So you can show your work however you want. I like the place value charts. Ones place, decimal point, tenths, hundredths. So turkey was, I'm going to label these. Turkey and cheese. So turkey was 0 and 75 hundredths. Cheese was 0 and 57 hundredths. So I look at my ones place, they're both 0. I look at my tenths place, 7 is greater than 5. So turkey is the more, he buys more turkey because the 7 in the tenths place is greater than the 5 in the tenths place. You could also convert them to fractions. 75 hundredths and 57 hundredths. Because the denominators are both 100, I could just look at the numerators. 75 is greater than 57. Okay, so he buys more turkey. Star for your work, star for your sentence. And we're done. Okay, if you're still working on these lessons, Very proud of you. I'm glad you're working on these, and your 5th grade math teacher, Mr. Smotches, will be very proud too. Bye, guys.